I slept for 9.5 hours last night and I feel fantastic. How are you doing? How are you? Why do we never talk anymore? Why do we never just like sit down and talk to each other anymore? Are you staying well rested too? Let me know. Let me know how you're doing. I want to check in with everybody. Let me know down below. I'm excited for today's video because my friends over at Our Hollywood, Daniel and Kim, made this really good movie tag. I'll put their post up on screen. This is what inspired this video. If you've never listened to their podcast, it's a great time. They have this wonderful variety of all these different topics and they do a great job. But of course, I decided to make it a horror edition of the tag. So for all the questions that they came up with, I will of course be answering with horror related answers. And all their stuff, their social media and podcast and everything will be linked down below. I was actually a guest star on their podcast a while back because we were talking about horror movies. I think that was like almost a year ago at this point. But we talked about The Exorcist, Get Out, a couple of other really great horror movies. So go check it out. Okay, now we can really begin. So the first question on this horror movie tag is favorite performance. This is way too hard because I feel like some of the best cinematic performances in history have taken place in horror movies. I feel like I need to make another top 30 list. I know it's more traditional to do top 10 lists, but I can't not include people when I think that they are worthy of being on my list. I did the same thing with top 30 scariest villains of all time, so check that video out maybe. I initially tried to make that one a top 10 list as well, but just couldn't do it. So I think that this is going to be a topic for a whole nother video because there's just too many. So I'm just going to kind of rattle off a bunch of my favorites. This is not really in any order and there are so many that I'm missing, but that's why eventually I will make a whole other video dedicated to it. So for starters, we have Courtney Cox from Scream. I feel like she is too often a bit overshadowed by Neve Campbell because Neve Campbell is more considered to be the final girl of that franchise. And I just feel like people kind of neglect the fact that she is also the final girl of the entire franchise. To me, I just feel like Gale Weathers has more of that main character energy. She's my girl. And with Courtney Cox, especially when you compare that performance to Monica from Friends, who is just this super neurotic clean freak, Gale Weathers is this super self-possessed, very strong woman that's such a different character, and I think it really speaks volumes to Courtney Cox's talent. Up next, I had to include another actor from Scream. That would be Matthew Lillard. If you've been around, you know how much I also love Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, and Matthew Lillard is just kind of like my ideal man. And the character of Stu Matcher is just so batshit insane. I don't think that anybody could have embodied him as well as Matthew Lillard did. There are a lot of actors that cannot do what Matthew Lillard has done for cinema, and I think that he deserves more credit for it. I guess when it comes to Scream, I'm kind of rooting more for the underdogs. Like, I prefer Stu over Billy, and I prefer Gale over Sydney. Hot takes, maybe, but sue me, they are the best part of that original movie. Up next would be Florence Pugh from Midsommar. Midsommar just means a lot to me. Danny means a lot to me. Florence Pugh as a human being means a lot to me. I guess I could lump her in with Toni Collette. They're often kind of compared because they're both in Ari Aster's most insane movies. The reason why I look up to her and that performance so much is because when I think about myself and trying to bring myself to convey depression and grief and panic and fear in the way that she does, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to do it. I just think the mental toll that would take on me would be way too much. So I commend her for not only bringing the performance that would make the movie so incredible, but also for going through shooting and putting herself through all of that emotionally to convey those emotions on screen. Because to act like that, those emotions don't just come out of nowhere. You're not faking it. When you act and you're a professional actor, you have to conjure up the emotions that are demanded on screen. And she was in a very deep state of grief for like the entire movie, so I can only imagine how hard it was to shoot that project. Anyways, I really shouldn't ramble so much when I'm doing these because I'm gonna make a whole other video, so never mind, let me move on. I will make these next ones a little bit more brief. Up next would be Shahadi Wright Joseph from Us. I know that Lupita Nyong'o, yes, she is the obvious shining star of that movie, but Shahadi Wright Joseph had that insane duality to her that I feel like Winston Duke and Evan Alex, both amazingly talented, do not get me wrong, but they didn't quite sell it for me in the same way that Lupita and Shahadi did. I mean, Evan Alex with the whole, like, you know, walking into the flames thing, I mean, that was a lot. Like I said, all a very talented cast, but I just feel like the duality of Shahadi's performance was so much more intense because her tether didn't speak and yet said so much with her crazy little eyebrowless face. Okay, I'm rambling again. Up next would be Georgia Wingham from season 3 of Scream as Beth. Again, if you've been around for a while, you know she is like my favorite character from that entire show from all 3 seasons. But I can't really tell you why, because then I will spoil the whole season. So just watch it. Up next would be Daniel Kaluuya from Get Out. I'm sure that you're starting to see a pattern from the movies that I am choosing from, but nonetheless, the energy that he brought to his role was groundbreaking. And it was so groundbreaking because it was grounded. Did I just sound like Oprah? Were you silent or were you silenced? Up next would have to go to Elizabeth Moss from Invisible Man. Again, very similar to my reasoning for Florence Pugh because of the emotions that she had to convey and what she was going through for like the entire duration of the film is really, really intense. And not once did her performance ever waver. She was so incredibly consistent. A lot of times I feel like with other maybe less successful movies, you'll see that the performances are just a bit uneven. But Elizabeth Moss, oh no. She showed up to work every single day. And lastly, I would have to say Samara Weaving in pretty much anything that she does. But I'm specifically talking about Ready or Not, the Babysitter movies, and Mayhem. All great, fun, dark comedies, and she just owns whatever role she chooses. But enough said, I've been talking for quite a while and I had only covered the first question. So, topic number 2, a movie from your favorite director. Yeah, so I'm about to be that basic film student bitch right now, but the 2 movies I have chosen are Midsommar by Ari Aster and Get Out by Jordan Peele. I don't even care if you think I'm basic for that. I really don't, because movies are highly critically acclaimed for a reason. Everybody loves these movies for a reason. Well, actually, a lot of people don't like Midsommar and they're like, oh, so disturbing. If this is one of your favorite movies, stay away. I've really seen people say that on Letterboxd. They really are quite scared of this movie and people who like it. But I've already mentioned it means a lot to me. I think Get Out meant a lot to a lot of different people. I think that the horror genre has had a decent amount of representation throughout the years, but it has never told a story like that before, and I think it was so important for that reason. And Us is a close second, but Get Out is definitely my preferred Jordan Peele movie. Oh. Although I feel like I've talked about those movies a lot on my channel in the past, so I'm just gonna move on to topic number 3. That would be a guilty pleasure movie. Okay. There aren't really that many movies that I feel guilty about viewing, because even if a movie is bad, I'll still rave about it on my channel. I'll be like, oh my god, it was so stupid, you have to watch it. So I don't really feel guilty about liking these movies, but I think that these 2 that I've chosen in particular are ones that most people wouldn't really find that enjoyable. They would just think that they're stupid. Although I don't know, who knows? But I chose Dark Shadows, which was directed by Tim Burton. This could possibly crack my top 10 horror movies of all time list. I'm pretty sure that it would. I just think that Dark Shadows is that bitch. Like, I love it so much. It takes place in the 70s. It's a dark comedy. It stars Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter. The lovely Michelle Pfeiffer is also in that movie. There's a great soundtrack, of course. The wardrobe is amazing. There's just so much about the movie that I think is genuinely really good, but the reason why I call it a guilty pleasure watch is because it's admittedly quite crazy and dumb. Also, the third act is pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. The directions that the story goes, it's kind of goofy. It's kind of really weird. And I know that the ending of the movie will lose a good amount of people, but I just kind of buckle up for the ride, baby. So not a movie for everyone, but one that I deeply cherish. And the next one that I chose is the 13 Ghosts remake. I chose that one because I feel like for the vast majority of audiences, it would be quite a bit too stupid to be enjoyable for them. For me, the campiness, the bad CGI, the crazy practical effects, the weird Disney family movie feeling that it has for some reason, I love it. I love everything about it. Also stars Matthew Lillard, who I just talked about at length, who I always talk about at length, actually. But yeah, so I just decided to put it in this little guilty pleasure portion of the video because I know that I think that it would be a bit too much for some people. I'm sure there are a lot of other movies I could put under guilty pleasures like Jason X, Seed of Chucky, Halloween 6, the theatrical cut, not the producer's cut. I hate the producer's cut. The Shallows, like, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot. There are a lot of movies that I guess you could call a guilty pleasure, but I don't care. I will proudly say that I do enjoy watching Jason X. I really do. So moving on to our next category, and that would be movies where everyone is hot. Yes, okay, good. I have 3 movies for this category. The first one would have to be, again, Scream. You might notice there will be a lot of common themes in this video. I'm going to talk about a lot of movies over and over again, but I have to, right? Because in Scream, can we deny that everybody is hot? No, because everybody is gorgeous in the Scream movies except for Dewey. I'm just kidding. David Arquette, he's a good looking man, but he's not my type, so he was made for some other lucky woman. But if you just think about like the fountain scene where they're all eating lunch there and you're just looking at all their fits, you're looking at the couples and how they're kind of cuddling together and they're all cute, and you're like, damn, yeah, I'd really like to be a part of a very attractive friend group like that. I mean, all my best friends are really hot, but they all live so far away from each other. And the next movie in this category actually shares a similar cast member who I have already talked about multiple times in this video. That would be the live action Scooby-Doo movies. So these movies were really, really formative for me, if you couldn't tell already. But can we deny this? Can we look at this picture and deny this? No, they are all beautiful people. Let us also not forget Mary Jane, okay? God, this movie must have been a bisexual awakening for just so many people. But let us not forget Mary Jane, and let's also not forget red leather suit Velma. Who's your mommy? My mommy? I don't need to say anything further. And the third movie that I've chosen for this category is the House of Wax remake from 2005. Again, I'll just let them kind of speak for themselves. Okay, time for category 5. What is a movie that you could watch 100 times? Again, I have chosen 3 movies for this category, and if you've been around on my channel, I'm really not going to dwell on this because you know my 2 favorite horror movies of all time, and that would be The Ring and Ready or Not. The Ring, just a very moody, gorgeous, amazing film with a very strong plot, a lot of very symbolic imagery, a lot of imagery that kind of provides a bunch of loose ends that somehow all get tied up in the ending. It's just wonderful storytelling. And then Ready or Not, which, you know, just Samara Weaving, as I mentioned. She's incredible. It's a dark comedy, one of my favorite subgenres. Also, the color palette and lighting and cinematography are incredible. We'll watch both of those movies for the rest of my life. And the third one, which also will probably not be a surprise, is Alien from 1979. We'll never get tired of that one either. Nope. One of my favorite monster movies of all time, one of my favorite alien movies of all time, favorite space movies of all time. It is at the same time both so peaceful and so chaotic. Wonderful acting performances, some of the best practical effects too that will just forever stand the test of time. Never not enjoyable, wonderfully suspenseful, some good gore, and badass Sigourney Weaver. What more could you ask for? Now this next category is particularly interesting because I've made this a horror edition, and that would be, what movie would you want to live in? I've chosen 2, although I feel like I could possibly choose more. Although when it really comes down to it, how many horror movies do you want to live in? The first one would be Midsommar. This might be insanely surprising to a lot of people. I just think that if Pele, oh my God, the beautiful, wonderful Pele, I think that if he invited me to visit his Swedish cult, I might like to join said cult. I don't know. Cults are very tricky. They brainwash you and they make you feel like family and they make you feel loved. And on some level, all that love and family stuff is real. And I just think that I would join. I don't know. Okay, never mind. I probably shouldn't have admitted that. I'm never going to talk about it again. Okay, the next movie is Dark Shadows. Again, sue me for wanting to have a 70s love affair with a vampire. That's really the only reason, and also I would just love it if my family was that insanely fucked up. It would just make life really interesting. Also, especially because they are very rich, and that would be nice, you know? The next category is sort of the companion to the previous question. That would be, what movie do you not want to live in? That would be most of my favorite horror movies, probably. Like, I wouldn't want to live in Ready or Not, or The Ring, or Alien. Would want nothing to do with The Conjuring, or Insidious, Saw, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, basically, like any great horror movie you could think of, I don't want to be in it. So this question was a little bit too easy. I came up with 2 movies because I just had different reasons for not ever wanting anything to do with that reality. Number 1 would be Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Terrible vibes. It's why the movie is so good and so effective as a horror movie. I also chose this one because not just the movie itself, but also the making of the movie was so horrifying. I talked about this at length during my Texas Chainsaw Massacre review that I did a long time ago. Also, that video is so old, but I rewatched part of it before I started filming this, and honestly, it's kind of good. It's basically like a whole video essay. I mean, I've done that with like all the major horror franchises at this point. Well, not all of them. There's some that I need to do, but it's just doing those series, just they take a lot out of me, and I kind of wanted to move on to different things. But anyways, I'm not going to go in detail about the making of that movie, but basically they were filming in the middle of the hottest time in Texas. I believe Texas is pretty humid as well. And they had to film scenes indoors with no air conditioning, with rotting food in front of them, and they filmed for like full days at a time. design. So not only the movie itself and those characters and everything I want nothing to do with, but also the making of. It just sounds awful. So the meaning of why I wouldn't want to live in Texas Chainsaw Massacre is twofold. I thought that would be a little bit more interesting to talk about. Now the next one would be Crimson Peak. This poor girl. This poor girl. It's a great movie. I do really like the movie. Great acting performances. However, Guillermo del Toro I don't want to point fingers. It just feels like he lives vicariously through his movies and displays some real questionable sexual scenarios. That's all I'm gonna say. There was a little bit of that going on in this movie, and it's also about this girl that moves into this giant mansion that's like moldy and falling apart and full of moths, and that sounds terrible to me. I'm very much a person that needs a clean and organized space, and I would frankly lose my mind. So yeah, those were the most unique movies that I could think of with the most unique reasoning as to why I would not want to live in them. Moving on now. This is also a very interesting category. I'm sure that I have a lot more movies that I could talk about in this category. Maybe I should make that a whole new video as well. And this category is movies you didn't like at first, but you do now. And I thought of 3 of them. So the first one, hold your horses. That would be Halloween from 1978. Okay. The reason why is because I used to work for someone that I co-hosted a podcast with, and I had to go see Halloween 2018 because we were going to talk about it on an upcoming podcast. But I knew at the time that it was a sequel to the original, so I really wanted to watch the original so I would know more of what was going on. But I was a very poor college student and I didn't want to pay $4 or whatever to rent it. So I just found it on some sketchy website and I watched it on my laptop kind of in the middle of the day because I was rushing and then I had to go see the sequel. So just not the best viewing experience, obviously, and I did not really understand the hype at all. I was like, wow, this is just like a really poorly aged, boring mess. Oh god. Last summer, I believe it was when I was starting to do my Halloween series, or maybe I watched the movie again and that's why I decided to do a Halloween series, but my parents had gone to bed and I was just having a really relaxing evening. I sat out by the pool, I got really high, and I got this really strange urge to watch Halloween again because it was on Shudder. I don't know if it still is, but it was on Shudder, and my parents have this great big TV and surround sound and stuff, and I was like, I really want to watch Halloween right now. And I watched it again and was just utterly blown away. Love that movie now. Love it to death. It's a comfort movie for me. So then the next one that I didn't like at first, but I do now, would be Saw from 2004. When I watched this for the first time, I believe I was 16 years old, and I've really never liked gore, still don't. And back then, of course, I was even more terrified. I was much more sensitive to horror and gore and stuff like that. So because the movie was so disgusting, I was so turned off. Like, I just really didn't like it. But I was too young. I was too young to just appreciate it. I didn't understand the art. So yeah, watched it again recently because I'd never watched the full franchise. So I did that this year. Then I watched Spiral. I did a review of Spiral and also made a Saw ranking list video if you are interested in any of that. But now I love Saw. I think it's an amazing franchise. I think the gore is really purposeful and really good. And that original movie, it's tough to beat. And the third movie on this list would go to Split. Initially, when I saw this movie, I just, again, was so disturbed. Just thematically and the things that happen in the third act, I was so revolted by. And back then, I didn't really have the more kind of complex understanding of the reasoning why some of the things in the film were in the film. Sometimes things are just disturbing though, and we will get to that in a later topic in this video. But I think that the disturbing things in this movie, for the most part, had purpose. Some things they're still a little bit questionable to me. But for the most part, things were very purposeful in their shock value with Split. So it took me a little while, but then I started to think about it more and more. I left the theater feeling really bad, but then after contemplating, I was like, oh, I see what they did there. So yeah, I'm gonna move on. Topic number 9, a movie from your least favorite genre. I decided to choose one of my favorite movies from one of my least favorite subgenres, and that would be torture porn. I just want to preface this. I know that Saw gets a bad rep for being torture porn, but most of the movies do not fall under that category because, like I've mentioned, it has purpose. But a couple of movies in the franchise, can we just be real? I do think they fall under that genre. But there is one of them that I still really, really love, and that would be Saw 6. I think it's an underrated movie in the franchise. I don't know. It's one of my favorite ones. Don't want to say too much though, because I feel like I might kind of give away a bit of the plot. So just watch it. Just watch the whole franchise. Watch it for yourself. yourself? It was hard for me to think of any more movies for this category because I don't feel like there are really any other subgenres that I despise. I'm a big fan of almost every single horror subgenre, so time to move on, I guess. The next category is favorite non-Disney animated movie. This was easy peasy because y'all know how much I love stop motion animation, so of course I have chosen Frankenweenie and Coraline. I also kind of want to throw in Corpse Bride because that is one of my favorites of all time, but I think arguably Frankenweenie and Coraline are just much stronger movies. I really hate the fact that people have the misconception that animation is just for children. There are so many children's movies that are also highly enjoyable for adults. They still hold all the same kind of impact and meaning no matter how old we get. Coco and Toy Story are both movies that come to mind. They're never not relatable, and I kind of feel the same way about Frankenweenie and And I kind of feel the same way about Frankenweenie and Coraline. Thematically still relevant, no matter how old you are, and they're both just so gorgeous because stop motion animation is one of the best art forms in the whole world. I don't know, I'm talking out of my ass. Let's move on. Next category. Ooh, overrated movies that are worth watching. I love this one. That Daniel and Kim, very creative categories. Again, I've already talked about this movie today, but the first one that I came up with is Halloween. Ooh. Listen, if we want to study the historical impact of Halloween, it's not overrated. However, if we kind of compare it to the filmmaking standards of today, it's a little bit outdated, guys. And I can vouch for myself, okay? I've already told you it's a comfort movie for me. It's a movie that I love, and I fully understand why horror fans love it. But she's basic. Halloween, she's basic. It was a very small indie production, even for the time. They had a very tiny budget. It's not technically the most well-made movie. Also, a common complaint is that it doesn't really have any kind of Halloween atmosphere. There aren't really any Halloween decorations. There's not really any kind of color palette to suggest the time of year like fall, but it's still beloved, and with good reason. I think it does have some kind of glaring issues that a lot of people they overlook them a bit because they like to wear their nostalgia goggles, but there's nothing wrong with that. And the next movie would be The Shining. I don't think I've ever made an overrated horror classics video. No, I definitely haven't done that. So yeah, The Shining. I'm just not a Stanley Kubrick bro, and he is not a bro of mine. I don't love a lot of his technique. I think the pacing of The Shining is really weird. I really don't like the changes that they made from book to movie in their adaptation. I feel like so much got lost in translation. The book is it's so much better. However, I still recommend watching it because the acting performances are phenomenal. And while I don't love a lot of the filming techniques, I think a lot of the imagery and cinematography is gorgeous. It's just a little bit inconsistent for me and like style-wise. But yeah, not much more to say there. I feel like I've definitely talked about all of this already. I definitely talked about it during my unpopular opinions video that I made with Tiago from Royal Horror. So if you want to hear more thoughts, then go watch that video. The next topic, I could make an entire video again about all of these movies, but that would be movies you wish you could watch for the first time again. Now with horror, of course, there are so many movies I could think of because so many movies have these crazy unnerving twists. And so the first one I feel like is the most obvious one. That would be Scream. I mean, the entire Scream franchise. To go in blind, not knowing who the killers are, would just, because I still so vividly remember my first viewing experience of the first movie. I was 16 and it really just, I don't know, it meant so much to me. The way that the story compelled me and the twist and the killer reveal, it was all so shocking and just so, like, the storytelling was so gorgeous. I would love nothing more than to experience that for the first time again. I'm sure a lot of you guys would agree. The next movie would be What Keeps You Alive. Now, this movie, oh my god, it is so painfully underrated. This movie throws you curveball after curveball. There are so many insane twists. Please do not watch a trailer. Please, never, ever, do not watch the trailer of this movie if you watch it, because the trailer gives away one of the best twists. It's something that you will not see coming, and I swear to God, if you watch the trailer, I will be mad at you. I will put you in a timeout. Just trust me. Please trust me that this movie is really good, and you'll want to go in blind. You will thank me. And next, of course, I just kind of lumped these together. That would be Get Out and Us. Jordan Peele he just has such a way to subvert your expectations. He does it like no other. Well, okay, he does it like one other director that I've already talked about again, so I might as well say it. I would also like to watch Hereditary for the first time again. Yeah, Jordan Peele and Ari Aster, I think why I love them so much is because of the way that they subvert expectations. And the way that they do it is not just purely based in shock value. The way that they do it is always in service to the story or the grand theme that they are trying to touch on. It's so, I just admire them so much. I feel like those are really self-explanatory though, because any movie with that kind of amount of shock value and twistiness, those of course are movies you wish you could see again for the first time. So the last category of the day, oh my goodness, yay! Have you been drinking water? If you're watching my video, I hope that means you're resting. Although maybe you're watching me to pass the time on the treadmill. If that's the case, I'm so proud of you. But thanks for making it this long through the video. If you're new, I would love it if you clicked subscribe and the notification bell so we could hang out like this again. But anyways, that being said, let's move on to the last category. That would be movies that no one can convince you to watch. I have 3 movies for this list, although, well, one of them is more like the whole franchise. But the first one would be The Hills Have Eyes. For me, sexual assault is just something that will always turn me off. It's not something I ever care to see. It's not something that I ever feel like has artistic merit when it's shown graphically. And also sometimes, even if it's implicit, I think really the best thing that a director can do, if that is really so crucial to the plot, is just imply it. Don't even make it a scene. Maybe just show the buildup and then the aftermath. I think we can all afford to skip over the very traumatizing and PTSD-inducing moments. So The Hills Have Eyes, I'm not gonna watch the original, nor the remake, nor just any movie of that franchise. I don't have any interest. I'm not gonna do it. The next movie, which also has a remake, would be The Last House on the Left. Again, just no, but that's for a very similar reasoning, so not really gonna get into that. The last movie that I'm gonna talk about is Jeepers Creepers. I have talked about this, I think, once or twice on my channel, but yeah, not gonna watch this movie. Oh, this one is also a franchise. Yeah, I'm not gonna watch any of the movies in this franchise. The thing is, okay, we all have to reckon with our problematic faves. I have problematic faves, I'm sure that you do too, but there are just some things that I can't really get past. If you know the tale of what happened with the Jeepers Creepers director, you might understand. This is also the reason why I don't think I'll ever rewatch Rosemary's Baby, because I watched that movie before I knew what Roman Polanski was all about. And I can watch other movies that had people that were involved that were problematic, like with the Scream franchise. Harvey and Bob Weinstein were the producers, and Harvey Weinstein, the reason why I can look past that is because, one, he is decaying in jail. That man will die in prison, and he is serving time for all of his crimes. But the second reason is because he didn't really have any creative input on the movie. Like, he and his brother more or less just funded the movies. They're not really in any kind of way his brainchild. The reason why it's very different for Jeepers Creepers and Rosemary's Baby is because they were the directors. They were the creative heads of the movies, and you're quite literally watching the story through their lens. So to me, that just feels a lot more intimate and personal. It's a little bit different when, like, one of the actors is problematic because you have this whole other team of people that are working on it and stuff, but when you have the director who was the creative head, one of the top employed people on the project, like, it's just, I don't know, it gives me the creepy crawlies and I just can't do it. So yeah, weird note to end on with this video. But yeah, that's gonna do it for today. If you would like to follow me on social media, if you want to see my vlog channel and everything like that, that will all be linked down below. Of course, let me know your thoughts on all the movies that I talked about. Give me some of your answers for some of these categories. I'd be really interested to see. But I hope you're staying rested and hydrated, that you enjoyed this video, and I hope I catch you in the next one. Bye!